And welcome back to the Rally Report podcast. Guys, a bit of a special episode today, but joining us are two staple names in the U.S. squash scene. Making a surge up their rankings, but more importantly, they're quite the entrepreneurs out here with this new squash initiative that they're bringing to the community. And without bias here, I genuinely think it's going to make some rumbles. And Spencer and Timmy here are going to give us a bit more insight into it. But welcome back to the pod, guys. How have you guys been?
Yeah, thanks for having us, Troy. It's always awesome to be on the pod, get some good banter going. But yeah, we're excited to talk about the league, and I know it's just great to get the word out. And you're one of the biggest voices we got in the squash world, so we're happy to get in here and start putting stuff out there.
Appreciate that. I just want to start off by how did this league come about? What kickstarted all this? And yeah, I just want to hear the backstory before we get into the rules and everything about it.
Yeah, why don't you start that off, because you're kind of the one who pioneered the idea initially, and then you kind of brought me on to the initiative. So
yeah, the actual foundation of the league was from, I was staying with Fernando Valdezan at a squash tournament. Fernando's the commissioner of the NSL, and I was staying at his house by complete chance at the Louisville 12K. This is, I think, last fall.
And I was injured at the time. I would have loved to play the tournament,
but
I was injured. And I remember you just texting me and being like, yo, like, I met this amazing guy, Fernando, and like, we're cooking up this idea and like, you should get involved.
Yeah, exactly. It was like Spencer and I spent most of our time together, and that was one of the weeks where we weren't together. But yeah, it was completely by chance. Lee Scott, who's the pro at Louisville Boat Club, just paired us up randomly. And I went over to Fernando's place, and like, he was such a nice guy. He's a chiller, and he loves squash. We were just talking about squash most nights of that event, and I ended up winning the tournament. So I think that did help, where like I was there for a week at least. And like he was really excited about all the matches, but we kept seeing like the same things you see at a lot of lower level PSAs, which are like feisty matches, people in the crowd kind of upset with what's going on. And there was one match in particular that you might have even heard about this match, but it was Safe Shinawi and Andrew Douglas. They played a big match, full crowd, all the biggest sponsors were there, and Shinawi ends up clipping Andrew in the face. Andrew's got to go to the hospital and get stitches, and it was like the dirtiest match ever, right? And Andrew was like, oh, I don't want to play this guy anymore, right? The head sponsor of the tournament leaves the match with his son, right? Like, it's just the worst outcome. So I ended up going back to Fernando's house that night. He's like, hey man, like, it's really tough sometimes when like we know these guys are great players, but like the environment wasn't enjoyable at all at the match. Everyone's just kind of stressed out watching it. So like, are there any like ways that people can watch squash, like not in this format, like where it's a little bit more fun, enjoyable? People are like, having drinks in the crowd and having fun, and the players are enjoying themselves more. And I'm like, there's leagues in other countries, but there's really nothing like that in the US. No. And he was kind of like, well, do we want to make something? And that's where we started talking. So we had like a few nights where we were like, what would you do if you could make squash more enjoyable in like the live arena? What would you do? What's wrong with PSA matches sometimes? And where would you take it? And that's kind of where everything started. And so it was mostly by chance, which is likely where a lot of companies start.
Beautiful startup story right there. So you looped Spencer in, right? Pretty much you were texting throughout this process, and then Spencer got involved as well.
Yeah. Timmy like reached out to me after the tournament, or like, during the tournament, he was like, yo, like I'm staying with this guy, Fernando. And we like got to talking about like the US, because Timmy and I had already kind of talked about how cool it would be to have something like this, but like we never actually thought that we would really do anything or act on it. But then he was like, I met this guy, Fernando, and he's like, he really wants to like make it happen. And I was like, sick. Like, obviously like I want something to happen like this just as much as you guys do. So like, let's all team up and let's start brainstorming. So Timmy came back to Philly, we got on several calls with Fernando, with other people, in his circle, kind of in Louisville, other lawyers. Fernando's a lawyer in Louisville. So we just basically started brainstorming on, first thing was like, okay, what are we going to create that's going to be a little different? So the first thing was like the scoring format. How can we change the scoring to be more engaging for fans? So that was kind of the first thing that we worked on. Mm-hmm. And then we were like, how do we want it to look? And, we came up with a cool logo. We brainstormed about how we wanted the season to function. What do other major league sports in the US do well that the PSA doesn't do well? We started asking questions like why do a lot of the PSA tournaments fall flat from a fan perspective, and what can we do to kind of to fill that void as the NSL? What product can we create to make squash matches more lively, more enjoyable from a fan perspective, even better, more enjoyable for the players? We just looked at the PSA and we thought, how can we improve this?
Yeah, I think like a lot of the best ideas in the world are like they come from a problem, like what's wrong, and how do you fix it? So we were thinking like why, because we love squash, like why are some matches on World Tour on Squash TV not enjoyable to watch? And we were thinking like what are the ingredients you need? Like you need both players to be playing well. They've got to be playing fairly. They can't be too many decisions. Got to be free flowing. There's a lot of things that have to go right for a PSA match to be enjoyable to watch for like the average fan. And then also obviously we were like squash on the World Tour level is not in line with other major leagues. So like we were like wanted to take ingredients from other major leagues, but originally like there was too much to there's too much there to unpack. There's too much to do. So for the first year, we were thinking like it's going to be too difficult to actually start a league right away. So we decided to have a trial match, a single match between two cities, and that ended up happening in Louisville, and it was Louisville versus Chicago. So we had a bunch of guys from the University Club of Chicago who are also huge squash fans. We brought them on board like with the idea. They were like, yeah, we'll fly down to Louisville and we'll draft two teams. So like we just picked a few of our friends, guys that were keen on the idea and love squash. Like these aren't top pros, but they're good players. We're talking about, guys like Sam Sherrill, TJ Nimbinski, Mark Brokman, Dylan Huang, and ourselves. It was a group that we could control really well. And we just tried it out for a weekend in Louisville, and it was a smash hit. And I think that was really what got the ball rolling because we weren't sure it was going to work.
Yeah, to be honest, before the first beta event, everything was just very like, everything was very, nothing was concrete. We had no proof of concept. We were just like, oh, let's try this fun idea, see if it works. And then when it actually worked really well, we were like, whoa, this could be something that could make a real impact on the squash community. Because if us, the players, enjoyed this so much and all the fans at this club, enjoyed it this much, then, there's got to be other people out there that are going to like this product. Yeah. So that's where we kind of got serious about it. And we were like, okay, let's try to expand this thing and let's try and really like have our first season next year. And that's when we started reaching out to cities, around the country, basically pitching our idea, getting on calls. We've been on 2-3 phone calls a week with different kind of like head pros, people who own companies who are just real big squash fans in different cities, people who have the financial backing to own a professional sports team. And obviously this is a very low entry point, to own a professional sports league. So I think that was a cool selling point for us, in terms of pitching our idea. It's not that often that like you can actually have the opportunity to own a professional sports league. So a lot of these people were very receptive to it. And we wound up getting 6 teams, for our first season. So, which was our goal, to try and get 6 teams for the first season and have a real live draft similar to what other sports, use.
A funny tidbit there as well is on the beta match weekend, we brought 2 different scoring formats that we wanted to trial out. And we were going to try one format the first night and one format the second night. But the first night was such a smash hit. We just did the same format for the second night because like the whole crowd was like, we're doing that one again and we want to see it again. Because there are all these people that didn't really even know squash that were just loving it.
Yeah, the second format was more of like an ABC, kind of like traditional format, which was like a 2 out of 3 games, team match. Ones play ones, 2 play 2s, 3 play 3s. It was gonna be like a little different. Like I think we were gonna like cut out overtime. Like if it was 10-all, you just play one sudden death point or something like that. But still, like much more traditional than the scoring format, which we used the first night, which is like totally out there, like basically like a mix between like hockey and squash, I would say,
and like Champions League soccer with legs.
So yeah, and I think people just like, it was just so out there that like people were like, whoa, this is different and this is cool. And like it's a real team effort, like the way that we use substitutions, the way that we use power plays, it brings a whole different air of strategy into the match that like you never really had to think about before. And I remember like playing the match like on the side, like with the other guys, like who were like not playing, and we're thinking like, okay, like who do we send in next? Like when should we use our power play? Like, what kind of matchup are we like looking to get on court? Like, and it just like it added this whole new layer into the match. Which
Yeah, the matchups thing is so tough to figure out. Like,
right.
The one cool thing that I still think maybe we could find a way to incorporate it someday, but from the scoring format we didn't use, we were going to do shootouts, which is like 2 players come on for 1 point.
Penalty shootout.
Yeah, like
That's hilarious.
That would have been sick, right? Like,
that would have been cool for the overtime.
Yeah, exactly. It was went to overtime.
Right. Neither of the matches ended up going to overtime, but if they had, that would have been cool. Yeah.
Yeah, but
that would have been cool.
Either way, yeah, like the weekend was sick. But yeah, like we can talk more about the format later, I guess. But there's so many things to think about, and it's really fun that the crowd is engaged, and like there's coaches, and there's, think about that. You get to pick who you're putting on the court against your opponent. Like imagine if you got Rami Ashore, Gregory Galte, Nick Matthew, and they're like, do we want Rami versus Sherbagi right now? Sherbagi's a bit tired. I don't know what we're gonna do here. Like there's so much to do. Like it's endless strategy.
Yeah, can we go back a bit on if you guys could give me the most brief way of like what the NSL is in terms of ruling the format for those out there in the audience. Could you guys quickly go over that, and then we can talk about strategy and stuff as well?
Got it. So the National Squash League is 6 cities right now, 6 teams that are going to compete for the NSL title. So it'll be 2 divisions of 3 teams. The 2 winners of each division are going to play in the finals, and that's our season, right? The actual format of each match is it's 2 teams of 3 players, right? Like let's say Chicago plays Louisville. They each have their roster of 3 guys, but they're going to play on that one court. So you get the whole crowd on one court. You're going to pick your 2 players to start off, and they're going to play. And the format is 2 periods of 20 minutes and 1 period of 30 minutes. And if your team is winning after the first period ends, you win that period. So let's say your team goes up 20-19 in the first period, and the clock runs out for 20 minutes. You're then up 1-0, and the score goes back to 0-0. And you'll play the second period. If your team wins that again after 20 minutes, you're up 35-34. You're up 2-0. And then you'll go to the third period. And the third period is longer, and it's worth 2 points. So even if you lose the first 2 periods, you can win the third and tie it at 2-2. And if it goes 2-2, you'll go to overtime, which is 5 minutes. And then within the wrinkle within that is that in each period, teams can call power plays. And the power plays, like, they're not for points, like on PSA, where it was exciting when PSA thought that maybe you could do 1 point that's worth 2 points, but it's too quick. It just kind of goes away. Our power plays are for time. So let's say Louisville calls a power play. They'll have 2 minutes where their player cannot lose points. So if they're playing rallies and their player hits the 10, the other team will serve, but they didn't actually score a point. So you've got basically the freedom to just attack as much as you want. And if you hit the 10, they'll serve and win up, but they won't score. And each team will have 1 power play per leg, but in the third period, each team will have 2. So they've got 1 2-minute power play and a 1-minute power play. And that's basically the gist of it. And you can sub in and out. There's a finite amount of subs, so you can't just keep spamming it. So let's say like Lovejoy's tired in the first period. He can sub out and I just jump on. And each player's got to play a certain amount of time. So it's 15 minutes time requirements. You can't just like not play one of your players.
Yeah. And then we have a North and a South division for our teams. In the North division is New York, Newport, Rhode Island, and Chicago. The South division is Louisville, Kentucky, Nashville, Tennessee, and Atlanta, Georgia. And so obviously the winner of the North division will play the winner of the South division based on their record throughout the season. And the NSL championship will be in Philadelphia at the Spectre Center. So it should be an interesting season.
Is there any perks for the winner of the champions?
There will be a winner's bonus, and there will also be an MVP bonus for the most valued
bonus.
Player.
Wow.
Yeah, there's finals bonuses for both teams if they make the finals.
Yeah, so it's a good financial incentive for the players. And obviously the other thing is, going back to kind of like why we started this league, we want to find a way to pay the players better. Because obviously playing PSA, it's never certain how much you're going to get from a tournament because it depends on how far you go. You could lose first round and go home with, not too much cash, or you could go far and, do really well. But this, our salary, for the players kind of guarantees that the players are getting paid pretty well, regardless of how they do how they play through the season. Similar to how other sports, pay athletes, for a contract for say, 3 years or whatever. And they're guaranteed that amount of money to play for the team.
But I think it functions in a couple of good ways here, where it's like the NSL also is going to pay for players' flights to show up to places, and they're going to put them up for the match weekends. So the players, a lot of times, like on PSA, the risk is that players are flying across the world on their own expense, and there's so much pressure on them to try to like not lose money or try to make a little bit of money. Like say if you go to fly to Hong Kong and the flight's mega expensive, you got to win a bunch of matches to try to break even. So I think here it takes a lot of the stress away from players. Like they know that their expenses are covered. They just got to show up and bring their best version of themselves. And so I think that's why our matches are going to have such good environments, because the players won't have that same kind of life or death mentality when they're playing. They're just going to try to play great squash. Because if you go watch two top pros play a practice match, it's phenomenal. It's amazing. There's no lets, basically. They're hitting 6 shots, and there's not that same kind of edginess. Whereas I think like with the NSL, we're just going to be able to see like that kind of great squash and that fun play and strategy, not necessarily those terrible scenarios where players are really playing for like life and death, which is, I think, cool.
I was curious, how does the coaching work in between these periods of time? Are you guys just coaching itself or the owners?
We don't really have like set coaches for teams yet. Right now, it's going to be up to kind of the players to be kind of coaching each other, as well as the owners can obviously have a say in substitutions and power plays and stuff. Power plays can be called from the bench as well. They don't have to be called by the player on court. So it kind of creates that cool interplay between what's going on the court and kind of what's going on the bench, like you see in like NBA games, how the coach can like call timeout, the coach can review a play, stuff like that. So yeah, we haven't like really decided how we're going to be doing the coaching for these teams yet. It's the first season, so
we've had a few applications though.
But yeah, we've had some inquiries from several coaches, trying to get in the doors early. So see how it goes. Maybe we'd like to, employ coaches for our teams in the future, because I think that would be really cool opportunity for a lot of coaches, and a new way to kind of think about the game, obviously from the coaching perspective. But yeah, for this season, it's kind of just going to be like the owners and the players sorting themselves out.
For the beta match, we did have coaches where like we had a coach for Louisville and a coach for Chicago, and it was actually really fun because they were interacting with the team. Like, yo, who do you think we're going to put in here? After a period, it's like what went wrong, what went right, because we were trying to figure out as we're going what the correct strategy is, because it's so strategic. Like, there's so many ways to mess up. But I do think this year, like each city is going to have like kind of managers at the local clubs that are like, whether it's the local pro or somebody is going to be helping run their event. So I'm assuming that person might act as a de facto coach as well for their players, or they'll nominate someone. But I think it's a fun aspect of the match, and I think each team will probably have some sort of a de facto coach, but we're not actually officially appointing people this year.
For example, like the New York team's been playing at Nickel Squash, and Peter Nickel is obviously the coach at Nickel Squash. So it's likely that he will step in as the de facto coach of the Nickel Squash team, similar to any other club. In Louisville, you'll have Lee Scott probably step in. In Chicago, you'll have Stu Haddon go in and be the coach of the team. Because I think it does add. It helps to have that extra person on the sideline, like thinking about making those decisions, so that the players can just kind of like focus on playing.
So having piloted this last year, I'm curious to hear what are some obvious strategies that were picked up on with this format that you guys could share with us.
So I'll say the first night we played, I got absolutely schooled by Lovejoy, and I was so upset by it. So what happened was at the end of the period, it was the end of the third period. I think it was 1-1. And so it was 1-1. It was coming down to the end of the third period.
The last two playing.
And what happened was we had used our second power play first. Because think about this, it's so valuable to have a power play in your pocket. We had used our power plays already, and I didn't get to use it. And I'd subbed on for like the final home stretch against Lovejoy. And he had a power play in his pocket.
I think I had like a 2-point cushion on you at the time or something like that.
So he had a small lead, and I'm like pushing really hard to get back into it. And And you're not allowed to call power play like within 4 minutes, I think, left on the clock, but there may be like 6-7 minutes.
Yeah, and we made this rule: you can't use the power play the last 4 minutes, just so you can't use the
Can't
power
just
play
ice them
to run
out.
the clock.
Yeah, you can't just ice them out. Anyway, Lovejoy just shut me out with the power play, and there was nothing I could do. Like basically, like I'm trying to get our team back into it because we were down 1 or 2 points, and he basically like put up a brick wall. He gets 3 or 4 points off me in those 2 minutes.
Yeah, so now I'm up by like 5 points, and there's only like maybe 4 minutes of play left.
And all of a
So
sudden,
Timmy has to make up 5 points in like 4 minutes, which is hard because then you just kind of have to start shooting and then not really playing the right way. So
exactly, I had to try to push the envelope and play more aggressive, which then made Lovejoy just like work me even harder, like because I was putting myself out of position and he was just taking advantage of me. And what ended up happening is we like it was a buzzer beater. They beat us down right to the last second, where like they won by like 2 points
I think
or 1 point, and the clock's running out. And I was trying to get my serve in. I was like, oh, just serve the ball. Like I was so mad because
definitely
we got totally out.
It definitely wasted the clock for like the last 5 seconds for sure. I did a couple extra bounces and then, oh, sorry, bro.
Basically, like we just got completely outmaneuvered by we wasted our power play early to try to build a lead, and like they defended quite well, and like they just shut us out at the end. That's what it felt like. We got shut out. We were trying to like come back, and he just shut the door on us. So the next day,
whereas the opposite happened the next day, because I remember you guys played really well in the first periods. You were up 2-love, but then the third period was close. But then you guys saved your power play again to the end because we had to use ours earlier on for some reason. Probably because Brokeman was shitting the bed. Do some damage control.
No,
but but I remember you gassed me out during the power play towards the end, and you got up by like a couple points, and it was just like so hard for me to get back because like I was gassed from like having to defend the power play, and then you had that cushion as well, so it's like double demoralizing to be like really gassed from the power play and down by like a few points with only like a certain amount of time left on the clock that you need to make up, you know?
Because that's the thing, you can't sub off. When someone power plays you, you're stuck for 2 minutes. So what we did, I remember that second day, we used Sam Sherrill, who's like quite a strong defensive player. And this is where it comes into like teams drafting. You got to draft offensive and defensive players. Sam Sherrill defended a power play perfectly. Like was just getting the ball back and defending, killing clock, while I was just resting on the sideline. And Lovejoy was using a bunch of energy to try to get points up. And then I just came on dead fresh. And Lovejoy was tired, and I power played him to keep him on court, so he couldn't sub off. So there's like all these little dynamics of like when to power play someone when they're tired versus like, do you put someone on dead fresh and then they get to power play and use up all their energy?
Right, because the thing is like if you power play someone when they're dead fresh, chances are they're going to be better at defending the power play, and the power play is going to be less useful because if you use the power play when, you know, say your opponent is tired, it's going to be way easier for you to notch off like a lot of points and like make that power play really worth it.
Yeah, because they can't just defend and throw the ball up in the air because like they're hurting.
Yeah,
but I remember it was just really
that's hilarious.
Frustrating. Yeah,
it was really cool. Honestly, both matches were like in the balance the whole time though, which was really cool because the way the scoring format works is like you're never really out of it until you're out of it because the other team, even if you're up 2-love, they can come back at any point and win the third period and send it to a 5-minute overtime. So you really have to be like locked in the entire time, making good decisions, and playing good squash.
Let's go. This is exciting. I was curious also about player misconduct. What's the type of ruling behind that? I'm sure we'll get fights throughout the season.
With the time and the running clock, people have already brought it up to us, like, you're going to have people wasting time, this, that, and the other thing. And so we have a misconduct kind of protocol, and we have it written up in the rule book and everything. And we'll have the referee keeping track of, a strict 15-second period in between, which is allowed in between points. After, obviously, the first offense will be a warning. Second offense will be it's a point penalty, right?
Yeah, I think it's at the discretion of the referee. And then there might even be something where I think we have the player taken out for the next period.
I think the third offense might be like you get ejected.
You're down a player, so like the two players are just getting gassed. Yeah.
I'll have to look that up.
We did actually write this in the rules.
Comments in the if anyone asks in the
hit us. What do you think
the misconduct rulings?
Yeah, like what should we do? But Yeah. Also, another thing here is that remember the players are feeling less heat on them because they're getting paid win or lose. So it's like they're not going to try to do like these weaselly things you might see on PSA as much. I think there still will be some because when you're in the match, it's so cool.
For sure, you still
want to win so badly because it's like really fun. It's team environment. But I don't think that they're gonna. I think they're gonna try to win on squash and not by angling too hard. But like, we have planned about it for sure.
Yeah.
Now, I kind of want to talk about the league itself right now. I wanted to start off with any sleeper picks or players that you guys think should be getting more recognition before the draft.
Yeah, like that's interesting because the draft. If you look at the list, it's really deep. So yeah, we could pull it up right now. It's actually not that clear who's going to be drafted and who's not. Because remember how we said you're going to need offensive and defensive players? Like some players that might actually have a much lower ranking are quite valuable. Like I'm looking right now, we're on the list. If you look down at somebody like a Matthias Knudsen or
Veer Shatrani, like he's really, like he's playing really well right now. Obviously, he'd be like a really good attacking player to choose for your team. Like someone like Ivan Perez, like is going to be a really good defensive player.
Amazing defender. But these guys are outside the top 20 ranked, right? So outside the top 20 PSA ranking. But I think to me, these guys are clear drafts. Like someone like someone like
even someone like, so for example, like Daniel Mekbib, he's 25 on our list and he's like a really talented lefty. Like he could shoot the lights out on his day. Like I think that he'll definitely be drafted above some of the, like, you know, some of the players in the teens, maybe, you know,
higher ranked,
higher ranked. Yeah, exactly. You know, someone else like Sanjay Jiva is the same. Like Sanjay's playing really good squash right now. You know, he's got really good hands. Like he's very dynamic player. I think that he'll also be drafted ahead of his position at number 23 right now. So yeah, I mean, there's
actually a lot of sleepers here.
Like, I think after the first two rounds, especially, there's going to be a lot of hard decisions to make.
I think
also it's up to the owner's due diligence on these players.
They're absolutely doing due diligence because it's not that clear. Like even at the top, like for the first pick in the draft, you'd think it would be Victor Kwong because he's the highest ranked, you know, by a significant margin, maybe the most balanced player. But like maybe you should be taking someone like Yusuf Ibrahim, where on the power play, he's so valuable because you can just rattle points off if your team needs it.
Right. But even at like number 3, someone like Agust who's like super tough. And, you know, I feel like he's going to like play really well for the team, you know, in like a team environment, you know.
When you eat up minutes, he can eat minutes. Yeah.
And it just depends on like how you want to construct your team as well, you know, like you really have to be considering drafting like a well-rounded team, you know, like Timmy said, like someone who, you know, is going to be an effective attacking player, someone who's going to be an effective defensive player, maybe, you know, someone who's more like an all-around, you know, kind of more flexible, has a lot of different skills.
I got an example here. So let's say
skill sets.
Let's say if you're a team and in your first overall pick, you take Ibrahim, right? You're going gunslinging for the power play. And then in your second pick as well, it gets to like the mid picks and you're like, okay, I'm going to go with Simon Herbert, who's another gunslinger, like just great technique, but maybe is not like the best at extending rallies. You now have 2 guys that are basically offensive minded. Your team is pretty naked right now. Like, who's going to defend on the power play? Who's going to eat tough minutes? You don't have like a workhorse. So you really like your third pick has to be someone tough and fit. And so that's going to be like, you're going to need to draft like Ivan Perez, or you're going to need to draft someone that's even outside like the top 24. Like you might have to draft Pipe Herrera, or you might have to like even like a Sam Sherrill, someone that just can eat minutes and be a workhorse or an engine. So you can see how your team, your draft strategy is kind of like as a unit. You can't just go, I'm going to get gunslingers, because then your team is actually like a weaker team than a team that's balanced. So like the flip side of that was, let's say you go Remiglio first overall pick, or like in your first round pick, you got Remiglio, and then you draft, let's say you draft Faraz Khan, second round. You now have 2 players that are like completely defensive minded, super good at extending rallies, but who's your gunslinger? Like who's going to go on power play and rattle off points? So now you might need to draft like a Matthias Knudsen, who's 30 overall on our list, but he's got gunslinging ability. So like it's not clear who to draft by their PSA ranking. You need to know the player profiles.
Mm-hmm. I'm curious to hear from both of you guys who will be the dream team for you, including yourselves separately.
Ooh, I actually haven't thought about
draft your squad. What pick do we have? But it matters what pick in the draft are we? Are we first overall? Are we third overall?
If you could have any, like, if you have any
Any
Oh,
three,
It's like all-star team, basically.
any
Oh,
three,
all-
including
Team.
obviously one of like you guys included in the team.
Okay.
So
I
I guess you're
definitely
picking
would select myself.
All right, pure all-star team. That's tough.
Pure all-star.
All right, I'm taking Ibrahim as my power play guy.
Well, I think you have to do it by round, though. So you have to obviously take one from the top 6, then you take one from the next 6.
So then this is an all-star team. Then this is purely like who we draft. Then
Yeah.
okay, fine. I'll take Ibrahim first.
I think it has to be somewhat realistic because obviously you're not going to dream team 1, 2, and 3. You know?
Yeah. Okay. So, but
Obviously,
I wouldn't pick those guys, but I'd pick Ibrahim as my first pick to gunsling on power plays. I'm going to take Charlie Lee with my second pick because he's just wicked fit and tough, and he's got good reach. He's going to defend really well and eat up minutes. And then for my third pick,
you kind of want like an all around.
I need a balanced player here.
Yeah.
I'm definitely not going with Lovejoy here. I'm going to go.
No.
I'm going to go with Ronald. I'm going with Ronald Palomino from Colombia.
Yeah, that's a
'Cause
good one. Actually,
He's tall. He's strong. He's got a good technique. He can move very well. And he's actually capable of beating top players in their day. So he's going to be my minutes eater. Charlie Lee will be my defender with high upside. And I've got a pure gunslinger at 1. That's my drafted team.
It's a good team. How about you, Spence?
That's a playoff team. That's a fringe playoff team.
Yeah, I think I go with Youssef as well first. I think his attacking abilities are just too good to pass up in the first round if you're able to draft him. And second round, I think I go with Juan Vargas because again, he can absorb a lot of pressure. So he would be my defensive player. And then round 3, I think I go with Veer Chatrani in the third round because he's got a really solid basic game. Like he can play hard long rallies, but he also has really good skill as well. So he can kind of like tailor his game to the situation you would need from him.
Potential gunslinger.
Yeah.
Which team would you guys want to represent if the owners are out there listening?
Oh, it's tough. I will say at the draft or at the beta match, which was in Louisville, it felt kind of weird playing for Chicago because like all the fans were rooting for Louisville, and I felt like a bit of an outsider.
Yeah, it definitely felt cool playing for the home team in Louisville. I mean, I'd put a bid in for New York probably just because I feel like the New York home match is going to be like really
It'll be bumping.
high.
Oh my god!
But Nashville, I mean, the people don't know this yet, but Nashville has the coolest logo.
Nashville, I think
in Nashville has the coolest logo.
we haven't dropped it yet, but
So,
the jerseys are going to be so
Nashville would be pretty sweet to be part of that team. So yeah, for me, it would be Nashville or New York.
I think, yeah, New York makes sense because you'd be closer to home, too.
Yeah, I have a lot of like home fans, like come out for the match.
I think
be good energy.
I love to play for Louisville just because I'm good friends with the owners and I really enjoyed the crowds there. I think like the vibes were amazing and people they now know what the league is, and so they're going to be knowledgeable coming to the match. We get fired up. I think it could be interesting maybe to play for Newport. Because maybe that's closer to home for me. Maybe I can have some family members come watch and stuff.
Newport's got close proximity to Boston.
Some slight proximity, and I think their logo is going to be sick. I don't know if we're not going to we're not going to reveal the team name yet.
Yeah, we won't
reveal the team name yet.
We'll hold back
It's good.
on that.
That's
Something
coming.
I would like for you guys to be in New York.
It'd
be much easier for me.
Yeah, I mean it's kind of crazy because like we're going to determine the draft order the Friday night.
Next question: how are you guys going to do the ordering for the owners?
So what'll happen is that Friday night at the draft weekend, we'll play that first exhibition, Team USA versus Team World. So that's going to be Victor Kwan, Yusuf Ibrahim, and Ramit Tandon versus me, Spencer, and Andrew Douglas. And then after that match, they're going to do like the ping pong ball thing, like NBA. Where we're gonna randomize. We're gonna have maybe I think a kid will come up and pick it out to pick who's gonna get the first pick in the draft, who's gonna get the second pick, whatever. So you'll order the 6 teams, 1 through 6, and then it'll be a snake draft. So if you got the first pick, you're not gonna pick until pick 12, and vice versa. If you have the 6th pick, you'll have the 6th pick and the 7th pick. So like just if you pick last in the first round, you'll have the best second rounder. And then they're just gonna go through all the rounds, 4 rounds of draft because you get a reserve player as well.
Gotcha. I'm getting excited about this already. Just have you guys talk about
it's
it.
actually nice teams. Who gets the first
Yeah,
pick?
man. There's a lot of different, things to consider here in terms of, just making your team. There's so many moving parts, and it's why it's so cool. Because it gives you a lot lot of things to think about, a lot of talking points. So,
Oh, I think there's something we should drop right now live, by the way. I think the fans need to know that Sean Choi of Rally Report is going to be commentating live the NSL draft.
I will be there.
this is true with the legend Jackson Bragman will be joining him. So
Of the Bragman breakdown, the 1-2
Very-
duo that it's the all-star meetup, the Avengers, the meetup that never happened but should. And so we just did it, and now it's gonna go down.
How were you guys able to convince all the players to join in? And also, were there any players that you guys were really disappointed that were not able to be a part of this? And hopefully in the future you'd like.
So when we first started reaching out to the players, like we were just kind of gauging interest from a really like informal level. We were just texting them, basically saying like, "Yo, like we're working on this new thing. We gave them like a basic rundown of what it would look like, and like, would you want to be involved?" And we got like a lot of positive, obviously, like, yes, like keep me in the loop kind of responses from these players. But you never really know, because obviously schedules are really difficult. I mean, the scheduling was one of the hardest parts of organizing this whole thing, just because there's so many PSA tournaments, and we want to be respectful of the PSA calendar, and so that the players can continue to obviously further their careers on PSA, as well as play our league. So, we had to tailor the schedule to the PSA calendar, which was not the easiest thing to do. There's also like a lot of other things going on, like European championships, other leagues in other countries. So a lot of players kind of had to tell us like, honestly, like it sounds really cool, but we just have too many commitments already. Like for example, Nicholas Mueller, we would have loved to have him in the league, and he was really interested at first. But then he basically told us like, yeah, guys, unfortunately, I have too many commitments already in Europe. Same thing with Iker Pajares. We would have loved to have him, and he was super interested to play. But he, again, had too many other leagues going on. But yeah, I mean, as it progressed, we continued to stay in contact with a lot of these top guys. Obviously, you have the list. It's on our website and you can see it. And we were able to get some really, really good players. So, we have like essentially 25 guys in the top 100 playing. The quarter of the top 100 is playing the league. So, I mean, that's a pretty good result.
I think it's great. I'm also super curious to see how these top college squash players who aren't playing professionally stack up, because I think they could do some real damage here. Also, guys, I want to ask who's doing these player bios on the website, because they're absolutely fucking hilarious. I need to know who's writing these up.
Timmy and I have been collaborating on those. The real challenge is to guess which one of us wrote which bios. Because we each have a little bit of a unique literary character. So you'll have to try and guess.
I think I definitely laughed on the. I definitely laughed on the Andrew Douglas one, on the eco-friendly.
The nicknames, the bios, like they were really fun to do. Like we enjoyed doing them. Like we are really good friends with a lot of the players on tour, so it was kind of easy for us to like work some of like the funny little things that they do like into the bios, which is kind of aligns with our whole vision of this league. Is we want it to be like more lighthearted, like more fun, more engaging than like not so serious. Obviously, we want it to be like really like a professional league, and when you get on the court, play real match. But we want to make these players more more like real people that the fans can relate with. And I think by doing player bios like this, like telling the fans a little bit more about the players outside of the court, you really are able to create that connection with the players, and you really get people intrigued. Like the fact that like now Andrew Douglas is eco-friendly. He's going to be really successful in the eco-friendly circles.
Exactly. No, it's been so fun to do, and I think it all comes back to like, if you could build something in the squash world, what would you make it look like? And we actually have the chance to do it how we want. And like say like something fun, like, oh, we're gonna poll the Instagram audience to see what Vargas's nickname should be, and the nickname we actually picked didn't win. It lost like just a narrow one. So we actually changed his nickname on the official site because of what the Instagram audience said. Or like writing the bios has been super fun, and getting the players. I don't think it would have been so difficult for someone who wasn't us to get the players, because like we are players. So it's so easy to go to players and they can tell that we're being genuine, that we really believe in the idea, and it's fun to play, and we have their back because we are players as well with the same interest as them. So like it's much better than having someone who's more of like a businessman type approach, being like, oh, do you want to play our league? And like it's harder to trust that kind of person. Whereas I think, we might look like goofballs.
Right. Like we're players and we're playing the league as well. So
yeah, we're in the league.
Yeah, you guys just commit. Yeah,
the players trust us to to sort them out. Whereas if you had someone who was, not as connected to PSA, doesn't know the lifestyle as well, it would be harder to convince them.
And then also like we're such fans of squash too. So like we kind of know what squash has been starving for. And so just people being able to engage with the players, we don't get to see who these guys are. And we just want to be able to show that on a certain level. Imagine, eventually if we get some of the top guys, it'd be so cool to have them, engaging in the content we're going to be doing. Like just to get people to know them.
I mean, we've already talked about doing a documentary like about the league, about the players that we have, and really like telling the players stories as well, not just as squash players, but as people. Because I think that's what, people love to hear about.
Yeah, because
it's really interesting to see like, where these people came from, what are their hobbies off the court, like what what does Tom Walsh like to do on a Saturday night,
I don't think anyone wants to know that.
Well, I appreciate, guys. I think I'm going to wrap it up there, folks. The draft is coming in March, just a couple weeks away now. Seriously, this sounds incredible. You guys bring back the team spirit and the fun and what squash is all about. And guys, please check out the website. It's so funny reading every of those bios, and just the website is it's incredible. And you two are spearheading it. If you guys want to do last plugs on it, feel free to.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, last thing for the viewers, like if you want to keep following along, just go to either our Instagram page, we have a Facebook page, NSL, National Squash League, our website, nslsport.com, and we now have a live page on Squash Site as well, and our YouTube channel, and our draft and exhibition are going to be both streamed live on the YouTube and Squash Site. So if you want to stay up with the draft on March 1st weekend, we'll be advertising it on our social accounts as well. I have links to it from our website. So it should be pretty easy to find.
And we have a sick teaser trailer coming out soon. So stay tuned for that on NSL Sport Instagram.
Yep.
So keep your eyes tuned. And then if you're big fans of the Rally Report, tune into the draft because Troy's going to be commentating on the matches.
I'll be there, guys. Come on.
You're going to be there.
Let's go.
Troy's going to be doing his research on all the players and throwing out those predictions. So stay tuned for some
stay tuned for that. It's coming up. All right. Thanks, guys.